Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul, and I am a nerd, and you are lucky enough to be here for the July 2017 TABS 3 virtual user group meeting, where today we are talking about credit memos and accounts payable. Mary Jo is going to take that topic. And verification lists. If you don't know what they are, well, join the club. Most people don't. And I am going to tell you what they are, how to manipulate them, and how to get rid of them if they ever cause a problem for you. Without any further ado, I will press a series of magic buttons and get to the point where Mary Jo can talk to you about accounts payable and credit memos. And I'm kind of hesitating here because I forgot to go into our demo data. So you go ahead and talk to them, Mary Jo, and I'll get you into the accounts payable in the demo system.
Okay. So a lot of times when we get refunds from vendors, usually things like a refund check from the Bureau of Workers' Comp, or we overpaid on something and they send us a refund check back. We're simply depositing that check back into our operating account, and we're just going to debit that account and credit whatever the original account it came out of. So it's very simple. But what if the vendor comes back and says, well, instead of writing you a check, you now have a $50 credit at Office Max? And how do we handle those? And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. A lot of people don't know that we can handle credit memos in our accounts payable system. And it's as simple as just going in and entering a negative invoice. So I'm going to come into a vendor for UPS, for example, and just say that we have a $50 credit from UPS. And I can even put on here that this is a credit memo or whatever we want to for our description. We can hit our bank account for that, and we can go ahead over and choose whatever we want here, postage or whatever. I'm going to just grab some account down here, other office expense, and save it. Now, what that does and allows me, oops, let me finish my journal number there, is to hold this invoice until I want to apply it to a future invoice. So it's just going to sit out here. Whoops, I forgot to put my amount in. Boy, I'm just batting 1,000 here. There we go. Put my amount in and save it. There we go. So now we've got this invoice out here. I'm not going to bill a client for that, so I'm just going to cancel out of there. And, oh, did I not put a negative? Doggone it. Thanks, Paul. I'm putting in my amounts and I'm not paying attention. Negative. There we go. Negative $50. Back to my general ledger, make sure I've got a negative 50. Thank you, Paul. Very good. All right, so there's my negative entry. Don't want to bill a client. We're going to close that. And now I've got this negative $50 showing out here, I think. I can't see it on my screen, Paul. Is that a negative? Thank you. So when I get future invoices from UPS, I can simply add those in, and then it's going to give me that option to go ahead and apply that $50 invoice if I would like. So let's come in and put in a real invoice of $100 now from UPS, and I'm going to change this to just postage. You would put in whatever it is, and continue on like I always would for an invoice. I'm going to have the $100 to other office expense. We're going to go ahead and save it. I'm not going to bill the client for it. So now I've got the invoice out there for $100 and I've got the invoice out there for $50. If I go to choose to print the check, that's when I can go ahead and apply it. So I'm going to pick that, and when I come in to print checks, now I've got the two in there. So I can attach that $50. I'm going to clear all, and if I only want to print my to UPS, I want to apply it to this particular invoice. So I've got my $100 invoice, and I choose this is the invoice I want to do it, so I'm also going to check the $50. If I had 3 other invoices out here for UPS, I could apply it to one of those. If I'm writing one check out, it doesn't matter, it would apply. But if I'm writing separate checks out, I could still do that. I mean, I could just choose the one that I wanted to apply it to. And I need to go ahead and say OK. So I'm going to preview this so that you can see that it went in there and did the credit memo for $50, and I have the postage on there for $100. Now, I started to allude to the fact that if you were doing separate checks for each invoice, this would not work because we need to have everything on one check. So you can turn that on and off. You can toggle that switch, and I'll show you where. But now we've got a check for just $50 because it took off our credit memo. Now, in your instance, you could have the credit memo number, whatever they gave you so that they can reference that, credit memo for invoice, whatever, and you can be using that and applying it. Now, to make sure that it's going to apply all in one check like that, we have to go into the vendor, and we'll go to the UPS vendor. So before we add credit memos, we need to make sure that this one check per invoice box is not checked. Now, if it already is checked and you usually write one check per invoice, that means a separate check is going to print for every single invoice, and that's normally how you would write it. But for this instance, you do want to apply a credit memo. Just come in here temporarily, uncheck the box, and save the vendor. Then go print your checks. Choose the two that you wanted to include on the same check. Let it print, and then come back afterwards and check the box again, and it will turn it back on for future invoices. It's not too often that I find that this happens in firms, but it does. We do end up getting credits for different things for a variety of reasons, and there needs to be a way to go ahead and handle those and save them to apply to future invoices, and that's how you do it. Paul?
That's awesome. I didn't know that. I'm not afraid to say that. Very cool. Okay, so I'm going to talk about verification lists. You've seen them before. Let's get into tabs because that's where you've seen them most often probably. If you're a timekeeper that's entering time, or you're doing just about anything, entering payments, entering costs, doing things in accounts payable, doing things in general ledger, you'll often see this prompt that comes up when you exit the, move that out of the way, exit the screen about the verification list. And if you're like 99.97625% of the people that we deal with, you simply hit cancel and move on with what you're doing. But let's go back there and take a look at what it's actually telling us. Okay. So it's saying that I have a fee verification list because that's the screen I was in, fee entry. And I could print it or I can delete it. And in some systems, depending how it's set up, and we'll look at that in a second, you can't delete it until you've printed it. But what it's asking you here is, what do you want to do? Do you want to print it, or do you want to cancel? Load and save, those are just loading and saving settings that are already preset. It's the same thing you'd see in any other report that you generate in tabs or Practice Master or any place that you have report definitions. And so what it's saying is, I've been keeping track of everything that you are doing when you're in the fee entry window, and I'm going to give you a chance to print a list to verify that what you did was what you intended to do. And so if we say OK and preview, we will probably find a very long verification, not too long, 3 pages, of everything I've entered since the last time I deleted this list. It will also show changes and deletions. Here's the changed entries. I don't know if you noticed that at the top. I scrolled right by it too quickly. Changed entries. Here's the new entry. Here's what the old one looked like. And if you deleted something, it would also show up in here as a deleted entry. So what it's doing here is it's just keeping track in a separate file, kind of a log file, if you will, of everything that has been done in this particular person's fee entry window in this particular instance. And these show up, as I said, for payments, for costs, gosh, everywhere, Mary Jo, right? We have client funds and accounts payable when you're entering invoices, and general ledger when you're doing journal entries. I think when you're writing things up and down, everything, virtually everything has a verification list. Now, so one of the things I want to show you is that you can delete the verification list. And this freaks people out quite a bit because they kind of pair the verification list with the actual entries. You are not deleting the actual entries when you delete the verification list. All you're doing is saying, hey, don't keep building up this list. I don't care. Just get rid of it. Next time, maybe I'll look at it. For now, I'm done, and I don't need to look at my verification list. And I will never need to look at the verification list for these entries. So if I hit delete, it will delete all the entries that are in my verification list. But then the next time I come in, it will start keeping track again. So I'm starting fresh. Now, while we're here, let's just look at a couple of these things. Report date, that's just the date that would show on the report. And of course, if you've ever been to one of our virtual user group meetings, you know that our demo data lives on 11/17/14. Portrait or landscape, that's just how it's oriented. What order? By entry, by timekeeper, or by timekeeper by date? Most people just go with entry order. But if you're somebody who's entering fees for a variety of people or a group of people, then you might choose either timekeeper or probably more appropriately, timekeeper and date. Do you want to see the client name? Do you want to see the work description? And do you want the timekeeper initials? Most people that are looking at this don't care about the timekeeper initials because they know that they are number 17, or if they're entering time for multiple people, they know that Bob's 17 and Georgette is 14 and yada, yada, yada. Now, you can also say, if you're a manager, that you want to print, and I'm having trouble saying that, there we go, that you want to print or delete for all users. So if I were to print this right now, and then come back and delete it, with this box checked, I'm going to see it for everybody that's been in the system entering fees, not just for Ron. So there are a couple common ways this would be used. Every once in a while, these verification list files get full. And so instead of having each individual timekeeper understand how to delete the entries, we simply would have a manager go in, check this box, delete the list, and it would be gone for everyone. Now, you don't want to just do that pell-mell because somebody may be saving those entries for some particular reason. But why would you want to delete the verification list? Well, A, because you've just printed it. If you've just printed it, you'll come right back to this screen and then you say, hey, let's get rid of it. I want to start fresh next time. I don't want to see these entries again on the next verification list. I'm looking at them right now and I don't need to see them again. The other reason is that occasionally people will be told they can't enter a fee because their verification list is full. Now, I've only seen this happen a couple times, and of course it happens at a larger firm. And of course it's going to happen for a timekeeper that's been there for a while in a system that's been using tabs for a while, because it's telling you that your list is so full, you've never printed it, you've never deleted it, and therefore I can't let you enter any more fees because I can't keep track of them for the verification list. So it's a good idea, if you're not going to print it, to delete it. And it's also a good idea, if you do print it, to delete it when you're done. There's nothing wrong with not deleting it. I see a lot of people just, and I do this all the time too, they just press cancel, get me out of here, I just want to go on to the next thing I'm doing. But if you do delete it, you will avoid the inevitable because eventually you will have to delete it or you won't be able to enter fees. And the problem with that is that when somebody hasn't been deleting it and hasn't been printing it, it's because they don't understand it. So when they go in and they get this message, A, they freak out, they can't enter any fees. B, nobody else in the firm probably knows what's going on because nobody's using verification lists. So therefore, C, it might take a day or two before somebody figures out how to delete that thing. And so here's this poor guy who can't enter his or her fees at all because the verification lists need to be deleted. So that's something to be wary of. Don't let them get so big that they stop you from doing something you need to do eventually. Because you didn't ever delete them. Now, where are they kept track of? In other words, how do you set them up? Because I'm about to show you that you can actually turn them off for quite a few things. So if we go into customization, which is under utilities, and then customization, and this is something that you need to have everyone out of the system to get into. So it's not something that you can just do in the middle of the day. And if you're just a regular plain old user, if you're an attorney or a paralegal who's entering their own time and you just want to set this, you can't. You probably don't have rights to do this. But if you can get in here, you can decide whether or not we are creating a list for fees or payments or costs or client funds, and then whether or not you want to allow people to delete them without printing them. Now, that doesn't mean if you say that we're not going to allow deletion without printing, that doesn't mean you actually have to physically print them and waste a ream of paper just to delete them. You can preview them to the screen. You don't even have to scroll through and look at them. So a lot of people will say that we do want to allow deletion without printing. And some firms will just turn them off. So some firms will just not check either of these 4 boxes. Other firms will check them for everything and then say, but we do want to allow people to delete them. And so that's how they're controlled. As I said, they show up all across the whole realm of tabs 3, Practice Master, AP, GL, and Trust, and for all sorts of things, journal entries, client funds, write-ups, write-downs, all sorts of things. Now, you'll notice I mentioned write-ups, write-downs, write-offs. Those have verification lists, but they don't have a checkbox here to allow or not allow the creation of those lists. So be careful. There will be things that you cannot turn off that are going to actually force you to keep a verification list.
And I'm just going to pipe in there just for a minute, Paul. The payment adjustments or the write-up, write-downs or those aren't storing the verification list. You have like a one-time opportunity to print those, and if you don't, you lose it. So those are things that if you want to know that, yeah, I did do a payment adjustment, you need to print it then. It's not a stored list, and that's why you can't turn it off or allow those deletions. It's always going to pop and ask if you want to print, but those aren't official verifications like these.
Right. Okay.
They are a verification, but it's a one-time verification instead.
Well, that's 2 things I didn't know in one day. That's awesome. Okay. One thing to be aware of, the fee and cost verification lists are shared between Practice Master and Tabs. So I have some firms that do imports of fees from Excel spreadsheets into Practice Master. And then the person who's importing those fees will then turn right around and go into Tabs and print the verification list. So even though you've put a fee into Practice Master, or even though you've imported some fees directly into Practice Master, as we all know, if you do that, those fees immediately show up in Tabs as well. And those verification lists are going to be in Tabs as well, or at least verification list entries for those items that you've pulled in through Practice Master. So just because you're putting a fee or a cost in through Practice Master, either directly or in an import, doesn't mean that it's not included in the verification lists. And that's that. So now it's time to talk about what we're talking about next month. And it's just one topic. It's a single topic month. Very exciting. Both I and Mary Jo will be talking about everything you ever wanted to know about printers. How do you set them up? How do you have one printer that you can print on both landscape and portrait and not have to worry about switching it every time? How do you set up an extra printer for definition for the same printer so you can have one set of margins for this type of reports and another set of margins for another type of reports, all going to the same printer? How do you set up statement printers? What's the difference between statement printers and report printers? Everything about printers is what we're going to talk about next month. And so I'm going to back into this month's topics because Leanne tells me that we have a question. Leanne, what do we have?
The question is, can you delete verification lists for one person, or is it only firm-wide?
Oh, it is for one person unless you check that box. So we're going to get back into fees. We're going to get back out. And the only way you can delete for more than the person that you're currently logged in as is to check this box. And that is something that can be turned on or off on a user-by-user level. So you can withdraw the permission for somebody to delete for all users. So as a default, it's going to be for the person that's logged into the system, not for everyone. And this checkbox is only applicable if you have the right to do that for everyone. So naturally, in a firm of 20 attorneys, you wouldn't give the attorneys the right to delete or print for all users, but you might give the billing administrator the right to do that. Okay. So one last thing, as we all know, we have to learn where to go to get this. Oh, we have one more question. Leanne?
Yes, so in the customization tab, Is it firm-wide?
Yes, that is firm-wide. You can't turn them off for one person and leave them on for another person. So if you're going to have them on for anyone, they have to be on for all. And then you simply have to train your users, hey, when you get out of there, delete that, because you don't want it to keep building up and eventually keep you from entering fees. Okay. So back to here, we'll go back to attorneycomputersystems.com, and you'll notice after I hit enter that I'm going to make special emphasis of the S that ends the word systems. attorneycomputersystems.com. This is where you can come to find out about what next month's Tabs 3 virtual user group meeting is about, or Practice Master, or World Docs. If you just click on this videos button, you will get a short description of each of our video titles, if you will. We have 4 live events. This is where you are right now. We have 3 virtual user group meetings that meet every last Monday of the month, usually. Tabs, Practice Master, and World Docs. We also have our coffee pot webinars. Those are also live, and they also occur on once a month on a Friday, usually. And so if you were to click on one of these links, or these more info links, you would be taken to the page, in this instance, that talks about the Tabs 3 bug, virtual user group meetings, short description, information on the next event. Of course, this is the current event, but the next event will be up here shortly. You have 2 links. Don't let them confuse you. They are both the same, take you to the same place. So if you want to register for a live event, you just click on one of these and register a description of what we're going to be talking about. Then as you scroll down, you will always find pre-recorded versions of the other events that have already happened. So we have literally, we should probably count at some point, Mary Jo, because I keep saying almost 1,000. I think we're getting to the point where we have more than 1,000 videos on our website when you put them all together. And so there's a lot of content out here. Another thing that you will find is our pre-recorded titles. We have 2 of them. Mary Jo has her eBytes video series. It's her short little 3 or 4 minute videos about one really cool, succinct thing that we found that we can describe very quickly. Or should I say that Mary Jo can describe very quickly. She records 3 of those each month, one on Tabs, one on Practice Master, and one on World Docs. And then we have our longer format Paul and Mary Jo show, where either I or Mary Jo will take a broader topic and delve more deeply into it, spending 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes getting into all the intricacies of a broader topic, one that requires a little bit more explanation. So remember that these are here. Remember that you can search for things, or you can just go straight to one of the titles and browse. And please take advantage of them. They're there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, even Christmas and New Year's. So that's it. Everybody have a good rest of the day, and we will see you next month at the Tabs 3 virtual user group meeting. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.